The piano sat in the corner of the Yamato family's small living room, a gift from their Brazilian neighbor who had returned home. Though slightly battered, with a few nicks along its edges and a sticky key or two, it stood proudly as the centerpiece of their humble space. To Kai, it had been just another piece of furniture when it arrived, more useful as a surface for his schoolbooks than as an instrument. But to his mother, Marissa, it was a dream waiting to come alive. "Kai, don't leave your things on the piano," Marissa would say, gently brushing away his notebooks and pencils. "One day, you'll play something beautiful on this, and we'll fill the house with music." At first, Kai rolled his eyes at the idea. "I don't even know how to play, Mommy," he said dismissively. "That's why we'll get you lessons," she replied, her voice filled with quiet determination. "You'll thank me one day." True to her word, Marissa enrolled Kai in piano lessons within weeks of the piano's arrival, convinced that music would offer him a refuge in a world that so often felt foreign and unkind. Kai's lessons began in a tidy, dimly lit studio a few streets away from their apartment. His teacher, Ms. Nakamura, was a stern, meticulous woman with a no-nonsense attitude. Everything about her, from her precisely pinned hair to the sharp angle of her glasses, exuded an air of discipline. "Sit straight, Kai," she instructed during their first session, tapping the piano bench with her ruler. "Your posture is as important as your playing." Kai straightened his back, his feet barely touching the floor as he placed his hands on the keys. The lessons were rigid and repetitive. Scales first. Then finger exercises. Then short, simple pieces with precise timing and no room for deviation. Marissa was thrilled when Kai brought home his first assigned piece. "You're going to be amazing, my son," she said, sitting beside him as he practiced. But Kai found the music dull. Though he dutifully repeated the exercises and learned to mimic the exact tone and tempo his teacher demanded, something about it felt lifeless. It was like painting by numbers, and Kai couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't really playing music, just following instructions. At home, the piano lessons became a ritual. Marissa would cook dinner while Kai practiced, her face lighting up every time he struck the right note. Sometimes she would pause her cooking and listen, humming softly to herself. "You're doing so well," she said one evening as Kai played through a short piece by Mozart. Kai shrugged, his fingers hovering uncertainly over the keys. "I guess," he replied, his voice flat. Marissa tilted her head, sensing his hesitation. "What's wrong, Kai?" "It's just," he hesitated. "It's boring. It doesn't feel like, to me." Marissa sat down beside him, her hands resting gently on his. "Music isn't just about playing the right notes," she said. "It's about what's in here." She tapped her chest lightly. "Your teacher can only show you one way, but the music is yours, Kai. You'll find your voice." The idea stayed with Kai over the next few weeks. During his lessons, Ms. Nakamura continued to emphasize discipline, precision, and repetition. "Follow the sheet music," she would say. "There's no room for improvisation." But at home, Kai began to explore. One evening, after finishing his homework, he sat at the piano and let his fingers wander. Instead of starting with the scales or the assigned piece, he began to experiment. His hands moved hesitantly at first, testing out combinations of chords and rhythms, but soon, a lively melody began to take shape. The sound was different from anything he'd learned in his lessons, bold, upbeat, and filled with the syncopation of rhythms his mother loved. Marissa, chopping vegetables in the kitchen, froze when she heard it. "Kai, what's that?" she called, stepping into the living room. "I don't know," he said, glancing up nervously. "I just made it up." Marissa's face broke into a wide smile. "It's beautiful," she said, sitting down on the couch. "Play it again." Kai's confidence grew as he repeated the melody, adding little flourishes and variations as he went. For the first time, the piano felt like his own. The joy he found at home didn't carry over to his lessons. Ms. Nakamura's strict methods left no room for creativity, and Kai began to dread his time in her studio. "Kai," she said one afternoon, stopping him mid-piece. "You're dragging. Start again, and this time, focus on the timing." Kai reset his hands on the keys, but his heart wasn't in it. "What's wrong with you today?" she asked, her tone sharp. "This is a simple piece. You've played it perfectly before." Kai hesitated, glancing down at the keys. "I just don't feel it," he admitted. Ms. Nakamura frowned deeply. "Music is not about what you feel," she said. "It's about discipline. Mastery comes first. Emotion comes later." Her words lingered with Kai long after the lesson ended. Was music really just about following rules? The annual recital was fast approaching. Held in a modest auditorium, it was a chance for Ms. Nakamura's students to showcase their progress. Parents and siblings filled the room, their murmurs growing quieter as the performances began. Kai sat backstage, nervously tapping his fingers against his knees. His teacher had chosen auspicious music for him. He had practiced it endlessly, but as he listened to the other students perform, doubt crept in. When his name was called, Kai stepped onto the stage and sat at the piano. The spotlight felt hot against his face, and the room seemed unnaturally quiet. He took a deep breath and placed his hands on the keys. The first few bars came easily, his fingers moving automatically through the familiar patterns. But as he continued, the music felt empty. It wasn't his. Without thinking, Kai shifted into something else. His fingers moved with purpose, weaving a samba-inspired melody into the piece. The lively rhythm filled the room, surprising the audience and causing murmurs to ripple through the crowd. By the time he finished, there was a brief moment of stunned silence before the room erupted in applause. Kai stood, bowing slightly, his heart pounding with exhilaration. Backstage, however, Ms. Nakamura was waiting. Her face was a mask of cold fury. "What was that, Yamato-san?" she demanded, her voice low but cutting. "I just thought." "You thought?" she interrupted. "Music is not about doing whatever you feel like. You embarrassed yourself, and me. This behavior is unacceptable." Kai felt his face burn with shame, but a flicker of defiance sparked in his chest. "I'm sorry," he muttered, but the apology felt hollow. "You will apologize to the class next week," Ms. Nakamura continued. "And if you cannot follow instructions, there is no place for you here." Kai didn't return to Ms. Nakamura's lessons. At home, Marissa tried to persuade him to reconsider, but Kai was resolute. "She doesn't understand me, Mummy," he said. "And I don't think she ever will." Marissa sighed, her worry evident. "But what about your music? You've worked so hard." Kai looked at the piano in the corner of the room, its keys gleaming faintly in the evening light. "I'll figure it out," he said quietly. He didn't know how, but one thing was certain, he couldn't go back to playing someone else's music. As Kai drifts away from the piano, a steady rhythm from a neighbor's garage catches his attention. It's the sound of a drumbeat, raw, powerful, and alive, and it stirs something within him, hinting at a new path waiting to be explored.